Thanks for sticking with us here on CBS News Chicago. I'm Marisa Vedro. We continue to follow the chemical plant fire that happened in the city of LaSalle, about 80 miles southwest of Chicago, earlier this morning. You're looking at some social media video that captured the moments after that fire started around 9 o'clock this morning. We're told everybody at that plant, the Karis Corporation chemical plant, was able to get out. They've all been accounted for. But there is a shelter-in-place order for all of the people living near that plant, the 3rd and 4th wards of the city of LaSalle, and it's over concerns that there might be some toxic fumes in the air because of this fire. To speak a little bit more about that concern, joining us is Sonya Lunder. She's the Senior Toxics Policy Advisor for the Sierra Club. Sonya, thank you for your time and your expertise. Can you tell me what stood out for you immediately when you learned about the fire this morning?
Yeah, these types of incidents are always really scary and disruptive for people in the public. As a member of the public, I only have access to certain information, but I immediately look to see what is held at this facility, what types of toxic materials might be burning, because I know people in the community have a lot of questions about what they should be doing, what's safe, and what the long-term impacts of a fire or explosion like this might be.
What is some of that initial investigation and data gathering that happens in the first few hours after this happens to figure out how safe people actually are in the area?
Well, fortunately, first responders have access to a lot more detailed information about what the fire risks are and the locations of chemicals stored on the site. As a member of the public, I can see that this is a facility that holds a lot of different types of heavy metals and toxic metals, as well as catalysts. People have been warned that there's an oxidant that's involved in the facility. I believe this is one of the chemicals that's actually held as a stockpile, not something used to put out the fire. But there are some questions about the fallout of that residue in the local neighborhoods and what people should be doing if they see any of this material, allegedly green oxidant material, settling out on their property. That is a sign that, that there are some concerns about what's in the smoke and what might be falling out and be long-term exposure concerns for people who live very close to the plant.
On that note, we have photos of one of these oxidants that you've referenced. This is sort of a green material, and the photo we're looking at is of it landing on the windshield and the hood of a vehicle that was in the area of LaSalle this morning. I don't want to put you on the spot to necessarily diagnose exactly what we're looking at here, but this is proof, again, you're saying, of how seriously people should take the fact that this residue might be present and in the air, and that people should be cautious when they're interacting with it.
Yeah, what we think this is from our review of publicly available information is potassium permanganate, which is an industrial material. It can be caustic or damaging to the skin. It's not something you'd want to inhale. The public has been directed to try to use a mixture of common household chemicals to deactivate or detoxify this mixture. I'm concerned that that's not very realistic advice for someone. They're not materials that people might have at their house. And the idea of people, cleaning up and doing that job of cleanup after an industrial fire doesn't sit well with me as someone with a public health background. Obviously, you don't want to touch these materials. You don't want your kids out playing in a yard if they're falling out. This is a clear sign that you're in the path of the industrial fire and disaster. And in addition to these solid materials that you're instructed to deactivate or not touch, I'd be worried about anyone inhaling any of those particles. So, it's a sign that it's not just the smoke that's a concern in a fire like this, that industrial facilities hold a lot of things that we don't want in our body, in our homes. And this is really stressful and concerning for people who live in the neighborhood, who might have kids at a local school, and who are separated from their family and have a lot of questions about their immediate safety in this moment. We want everyone to follow the fire department requirements and advice to stay inside when they're inside. But, as an activist, we really focus on how we can prevent and minimize these types of emergencies across the U.S. We know that chemical disasters happen every 3 days in the United States, and the Biden administration is actually working to review and strengthen the rules to prevent these kind of explosions and fires, to make sure fire suppression systems are modern and effective, and to make sure materials are stored and handled in a way that minimizes this type of massive and scary disruption for local communities.
I was going to ask the Sierra Club's stance on this and the work that you do. So you are trying to avoid this happening and threatening more communities. Give us the elevator pitch for those who don't know what the role of the Sierra Club plays.
Yeah, well, there are federal rules that actually oversee the management and risk management for chemical facilities. And Sierra Club is part of a large and broad environmental justice alliance that is working to strengthen these rules. We want more facilities to be covered by these rules. We want them to be stronger in terms of disaster prevention, fire safety, and disclosure to communities when incidents like this occur. There is a lot more that we can and should be doing to prevent these types of disasters from impacting our communities.
So lastly, Sonya, it sounded like your best advice to people living in that area is to wait to hear word from first responders on not only how they should go about their day, if they should go out and trust this air, or how they should interact with any of this oxidant that we saw on that windshield or any other surfaces it may have landed on.
Yeah, we advise people to follow all fire safety warnings. If you're outside of that zone, but you see or smell or experience disruption, smoke, or this catalyst, that take precautions, avoid the contact with those chemicals. If you have the materials on hand to detoxify or deactivate the oxidant, fine, but really understand that we're calling for a comprehensive response from the local government and fire system and the company itself to fully clean up and protect the community and not putting that burden on individual homeowners and residents.
Sonya Lunder, Senior Toxics Policy Advisor for the Sierra Club, thank you so much for your time and expertise. We appreciate you sharing all of that with us today.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. We here on CBS News Chicago and CBS 2 will continue to follow this story throughout the rest of the afternoon. We've learned that there is a press conference out of LaSalle updating the situation set for 4 o'clock. We'll be sure to bring that to you during our newscast. We'll also have a live report from CBS 2's Sarah Maki, who's been at the scene all day. She'll have new information for us coming up tonight in our news at 5.